I don't know whether this one sounds familiar to any of you, but obviously this is an interesting time. We live in interesting times from a business perspective, and a lot of organisations are going through change. I was working, obviously I work with all sorts of different organisations, but I was working with a company recently, funnily enough, running a strategic change management course. And what had happened was let's say an office, a national company, one of the offices was had closed down, which was a surprise to them, and it was a surprise to the rest of the business, obviously not to the senior managers who made that decision, but it was a surprise to others. And it was just the way it was handled. I'm not going to say what company it is, so it doesn't matter what I say in that sense about this. It wasn't handled very well. I'll give you an example. So one of the guys who was on the course had been had managed to sort of keep a job elsewhere within the organisation. But he said what happened was, the day it happened, they called people in, sort of all the staff, and they did that classic one, which I really thought didn't happen anymore, where it's like either you get kind of invited to one of two rooms. Well, the way they did this, like so we're all in a room together, and it was like, okay, I'm going to read out some names. You go into the room over there. So, and what was happening, of course, people are beginning to, what on earth is this all about? And then people are beginning to twig a little bit. There's like, I actually hope I'm not on this list. And then there's this kind of like, that person's on the list. Is this alphabetical? What's happening here? But anyway, apparently what happened was obviously the people that were going into the other room sadly were being made redundant, and the guy who was on the course obviously was not. But what he said was, what happened at that point, the manager who kind of read all the names out stayed in the room and just went, I've got to read this to you, and just read out, so this is kind of what's happening with very little detail, just we're closing down this office, people are going to be made redundant. Yeah, that's it really. And that was it. Now you can imagine the reaction in the group, not very happy people, and hence the resistance. And isn't it interesting how different managers, for example, or different leaders can handle this in different ways, because he said 2 days later, one of the senior managers from another part of the business, of kind of head office as such, came in, and just the way this guy talked to the group or communicated to the group, and just before he communicated with the group as well, turned things around dramatically. So the guy who was on the course said just something that this guy said, or the way he handled things, just made a massive difference to him. And actually, I won't say he converted him to make him think, oh, this is really great. Of course it's not great, however, just to kind of see it from another angle. And I think that's one of the things, the gifts that good management and leadership brings to the nature of change, is the ability, I won't use the word sell, but to frame, to put something in a particular way that, yes, potentially it's going to hurt, and at the same time, this is why, or whatever it may be, the way they're putting it across, people can, of course they can get angry. It's a natural human reaction to be angry and shocked and go through the whole kind of transition curve, which I'll mention again later on. However, it was what this person said. And isn't it just interesting how different people handle this? Now, what NLP is all about is modelling people who are good at things. That's how it all began in the first place. People who are purists with NLP say it's not all these techniques and weird, wonderful things that have come out of it that you see in all the books. It's one thing, which is modelling. It's taking somebody who is good at something and going, what is it? Not only are they doing, what are they thinking? What goes through their mind? What do they say to themselves when they're doing these things? And then, once we've got that information and found out what their strategies are, how do we teach that to other people? It kind of makes a logic, doesn't it? Sales, for example, it would make sense. You take the best salespeople, find out how they do it, what they do, what they're thinking, what they do when they're about to go in, or to present, or to make a phone call, and then teach that to everybody else. It doesn't always happen, though. It does in some areas. This is sometimes how competencies are born.